glad you're here today. Let's begin as we have this series with a question, because we started the entire series called Be with a question, sort of a fill-in-the-blank kind of question. And maybe you've not thought about this before, but honestly, it's a pretty interesting question. And here's the question, would be right here. What does our world need right now? Like if you got to be the person that said, I get to fill in the blank and something would change, like how would you fill that in? What would you say our world needs right now? And here's what my guess is that there are as many different answers to this question as there are people here or listening right now. I think that's just true. So what would be your answer? So here's a couple of mine. Not that mine matter or are any more important than anybody else's answer. Just a couple of my thoughts, right? So let me tell you what I don't think we need more of right now. I don't think we need more of the same. I don't think we need more of the past. I don't think we need more arguing. I don't think we need more promises. Now, the Apostle Paul, who wrote so much of the New Testament, he had a really interesting answer to this question. You know what Paul said our world needs more of? You ready for this? Paul said our world needs more of you and me. Us who call ourselves Jesus followers. But not the current version of us. Not the current version of me or of you. What our world needs is a grown-up version of us. It needs people who are mature Jesus followers, people who don't act like children, people who refuse to bite and provoke, and people who win the respect of people who are not Christ followers. People who, and this is what we're talking about in this series, people, Jesus followers who are actually led by God's Spirit, the Holy Spirit. And the truth is, we all have work to do to learn to become more mature and to be led by God's Spirit in our lives. And what that produces and what that creates is Jesus followers, when it happens, Jesus followers who are more Christ-like, which is really what our world needs now. And so the question we're asking is, what does Christ look like? What did Jesus look like? What did he act like? What did he react like? And look, it's not a new to-do list for you to get or for me to get and write down, but Paul called this the fruit of the Spirit, which we've said it's the fruit of something that gets produced in us. Like, we don't have it on our own. It gets produced in us and through us. It's an outcome, and it gets produced because it's an outcome of our submission or our obedience to God's Spirit that is planted inside of every Jesus follower. In fact, we said that one of the fruits of the Spirit is love. In fact, this is kind of, we talked about this, it's sort of the overarching idea for every one of the ones that come after it. And so it was first. And then last week we talked about joy. And joy and what it looks like for joy to be produced, grown in our lives. And so next in the list for us today is simply this. It's peace. The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, and peace. Now, sometimes it's helpful to start by considering what the opposite of something is. So if we were to back up a couple of verses from where this comes from in Galatians chapter 5, if we went backwards to verse 19, we get to see what the fruit of the Spirit is being contrasted with, because there's a list of that too that comes before the fruit of the Spirit. And what the fruit of the Spirit is being contrasted with, it says, in fact, Paul calls it the acts of the flesh. So he calls that the fruit of the Spirit, but just before that, he said there are these things that are the acts of the flesh, like what we do in our normal flesh. Those are of the Spirit of God. This is of our flesh. And then he gives us this whole list, and look at some of the things that are included in it. The acts of the flesh are hatred, discord, jealousy, fits of rage, selfish ambition, dissensions, factions, and envy. And as it turns out, the acts of the flesh produce a peace deficiency. Like left to our own devices, left on our own, not led by the Spirit, we bring all sorts of things that are opposite of peace into our lives and into our world when we're just left on our own to do it the way we do it. Now, we often think of peace as the absence of all of those things. Like if all of those things aren't around, then it'll be peaceful. The absence of conflict or the absence of war. But the peace Paul is talking about is not just the absence of something. It's the presence of something that is far greater than all of these things, even if these things are happening. Here's the idea. The Old Testament, written in Hebrew, the Hebrew word in the scriptures for peace. Anybody know what that is? It's this. It's shalom. There it is. There's a Hebrew word. It's shalom. Right? You've probably heard that before. And shalom is not just the absence of conflict. It's not the absence of war. Like in the Old Testament, God would tell Moses to build an altar, and he would tell him, when you build this altar, I want you to build it with stones that have never been cut. No stone is to go on there because no stones that were fractured or cracked, and he was describing a characteristic, and the characteristic he was describing of these stones was wholeness. I want whole, complete stones. And when Solomon, who was later built, who finished the temple, it was told there were no gaps. When he was done building, there were no gaps in the temple anywhere. The wall of the temple were closed up. It was complete. And so it was this idea of also completeness. Shalom is something that has no gaps in it. It's also in Exodus when Joseph, who became the prime minister of Egypt, was inquiring about his father who he hadn't seen since he was 17 years old. And when David, the King David, was inquiring about his men who were out to war, and in both cases they were trying to find out how they were doing. And in both cases they got reports back saying they are alive and they are in a state of shalom. They were in a state of well-being. So the truth is, God's shalom, God's peace that he's talking about that is built in us is not just the absence of conflict or difficulty or the absence of bad circumstances in our life. It is the presence of wholeness and completeness and well-being. And what's interesting is the people of Israel were not good at having or maintaining shalom. And so they needed help. They were not good at internally in their souls or externally in their community or with people outside of them. They were constantly in conflict. Sounds familiar. Sounds about like our world today. And that's why Isaiah, one of the Old Testament prophets, talked about how God was going to deliver from that nation of Israel for all of this conflict. And he told them, I'm going to deliver you because there's a king coming. We usually talk about this king at Christmas time, and he says that this king that's coming will be God's final king, and he's going to be a wonderful counselor, a mighty God, the everlasting Father. He will be, the Prince of Peace. He'll be the one that delivers and guides people into all peace. Now, on the other side of that, right? So now Jesus has come. Jesus came and gave his life like he came to do. He resurrected. He goes back to heaven. And Paul now is talking about how do we now lean into God's final king, Jesus? How do we lean into this Prince of Peace that God promised in a world now to experience that peace in our lives? And it would be easy to try to list out and talk about, if we could, and we could do this. In fact, lots of people are. It's just really easy to list out and talk about the social and the political and the racial unrest that we've experienced, even recently. That's easy. But what psychologists say is the most significant thing in our day is not all of that. It is a lack of inner peace. Because most psychologists say that the greatest social concern of our day today is the number of cases of anxiety. It's on the rise. It's skyrocketing since about 2010. I don't know if you've maybe read the book called The Anxious Generation. If you haven't, if you have kids, I recommend you read that. Jonathan Haidt talks about where all of this came from and why it spiked in 2010. Because in 2010, among Generation X, my generation, right, cases of anxiety are up 52% since 2010. In the last 15 years, the millennial generation is up 103. And then, get this, you can see it there. This generation coming up, Gen Z, 18 to 25-year-olds, has gone up 139% and continues to grow at a rapid rate. There was a study done in 2024 of people who were experiencing what we'll call anxiety depressive order, right? You may have heard of this. And here's what they found out in this particular study, that 20% of 65-year-olds and over, that 20%, just over 20% experience anxiety depressive disorder, people over 65. People 50 to 64, that there's 29% of this category of people, this age group, just over 29% who are experiencing this. Right? And then, look at this, between 25 and 49-year-olds, it's 38%. You ready for this? 18 to 24, it's almost 1 for 1. This was, you know what this means? This means 83 million plus adults in America reported experiencing anxiety depressive disorder last year. And so the question is what do we do about that? How do we, as thoughtful Jesus followers, interact and deal with what is in our world like this today that's causing so much of this? Because our world definitely needs more. What it needs more right now is more peace, mainly inner peace. And early Jesus followers were actually given some of the very specific instructions, and they were also living in the middle of chaos. I mean, I'll just tell you, I believe it was harder to live as a follower of Jesus in their day than it is in our day. Because they were dealing with a Roman power that had overtaken their nation. They were their rulers, and they were trying to serve their God, but they were their rulers, and they were trying to suppress the movement of Jesus followers. And the Apostle Paul gives these instructions to them on how to deal with chaos like that. And here's what he says. He says, do not be anxious about anything. Okay, any questions? And it's like, oh, Paul, great idea. Why didn't we think about that? We'll just stop being anxious. I mean, come on, I don't even think that's possible. What do you mean, don't be anxious about anything? You can't just stop being anxious. It's not like I decided, I think I'm going to be anxious today. It's not how it works, Paul. What are you talking about? Honestly, I think this is probably one of those places where the thought gets lost in translation, because upon further review, let's just Greek out for a minute. Because it's actually so helpful to look at this. We're now over in the New Testament, so it's written in Greek, right? And so this word right here, merimna, actually means anti-shalom. Everything about it is opposite of shalom. Mary, that's the word that we get, M-A-R-I, is the word we get where we talk about meridian, as you know, that separates the earth from north to south pole. And so it divides mind and spirit. And so the description of this word, while it's translated anxious, because this is the word there, it means to divide, to be divided in your inner being. When you're anxious, you're divided in your inner being. It also has this meaning that you have a fractured heart, like somebody hurt you or betrayed you. Somebody's done something to you, and it's fractured you. This word also carries the meaning of being pulled apart in terms of like your will. And so you can be divided in your mind, and you can be fractured in your heart, and you can be pulled away from your will of what you want to do, which is all the exact opposite. It's anti-shalom. And this is why the command, in fact, the apostle is saying, don't let anything pull you apart. Don't let anything divide you or tear you apart on the inside. And the reason is because if you have a divided mind, if you have a fractured heart, or if you're being pulled in two directions in terms of what should I do, you know this, you already know this, you don't feel confident of where to go. And you don't feel whole. And you don't feel well. And you feel vulnerable, and you maybe even feel fragile. And when you are, and when you feel that way, we're more easily persuaded, and more easily manipulated, and more easily controlled when we feel that way. Look, we've all seen this happen. You may have heard this. You may have said this, right? Nothing divides like politics. I mean, we've seen this in terms of social unrest, and we've experienced it all over again recently, and it's a climate, this is a climate that's ripe for division. And we've seen the division and the fracturing of families, and the fracturing of friendships and communities and organizations, and oh my gosh, yes, you even guessed it, the fracturing of churches. We've seen it happen, and the reason nothing divides like politics is because nothing divides like fear. See, fear is actually what's at the root of that. Fear is what pulls us apart. It's what divides and fractures us, and it starts on the inside of us, and we're easily controlled and manipulated when we're in fear. And then the question we begin to ask ourselves is, okay, well, I don't know who to trust, so who can I trust? I mean, you've got this group over here that's trying to get your attention, and you've got another group over here that's trying to get your attention over on this side, and Paul is trying to say to us, stop. Don't look left. Don't look right. I want you to look up, because the truth is, if you're looking to people who actually, when you look each side, you're looking at people who actually can't control anything. They don't have the power to change anything. And so the question we're asking is, who do we give the power to? Who are we going to put our hope in? And look, I've just got to remind you, no election has ever solved this in the history of the world. Not one. And the reason is because our votes do not result in the sovereign control of the world. You might think it does. It doesn't. You know why? Because that job is already taken. Paul says this, do not be anxious about anything, but in everything that's going on with you, with your prayers and your petitions, and as you come in thanksgiving for what God has done, you present your request to God. So whatever's pulling at your heart or your mind or your marriage, or whatever's pulling your family apart, whatever is robbing you of your shalom, your wholeness, your completeness, your well-being, that you should take this to the authority on peace. And it's not who you think it is. It's not the people who are making promises to you. It's not the people who are arguing with each other. There's one person that can deliver that to you, and you're not going to be voting for them. In fact, he doesn't even need your vote. Now, this doesn't mean we just give up and we just don't care about all the stuff anymore. It means what we're going to do is we're going to hand it over, and we're going to entrust it to someone else. That's the key word, right? You're going to entrust it. You're going to entrust what's going on to someone who actually cares about it, someone who actually cares about you, and best of all, you're going to hand it over to someone who actually has the ability to do something about it and the ability to intervene in our lives. God says, when you bring those requests to me, your petitions with thanksgiving, and when you exchange that, look at what he says. When you do that, the peace of God, which transcends all understanding. Like, I'm not even sure how it works, but it will guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. Do you know where you've seen this before? That kind of peace? This peace that surpasses our understanding. Like, I don't even know how you could be so calm right now. You see it at funerals, is where you see it. As you can imagine, I have done my fair share of funerals. And you see this when it's the difference between a celebration or a devastation at a funeral. When people grieve with hope, they can celebrate a life well lived, no matter how long they lived. When people grieve without hope, it's just devastation because you're uncertain about what's going to happen next. And there's another step in this process, and Paul tells us it's not just trusting. It's not just that you entrust what's going on to God, but there's another step where in the process where you begin to shift your mind. This is how we cultivate the soil for the Holy Spirit to do something. We begin to shift our mind. And here's what Paul says. He says we shift our mind, what to? To whatever's true, and whatever's noble, and whatever's right, and whatever's pure, and whatever's lovely, and whatever is admirable. If there's anything is excellent or praiseworthy, look at what he says to do. Think about those things. No one just stops worrying about things. Because you can't anymore stop worrying than you can just stop a bad habit. You can't stop a bad habit. It has to be replaced, right? You have to trade one thing for the other. You have to trade what you're currently thinking about for something better and something more helpful. And the reason this is so difficult is because we are psychologically predisposed to pay attention to bad news. You know how I know this is true? You ever seen something bad happen on the side of the road and it didn't really impede traffic? And we all stop because we got to take a look? Things that sometimes are harmful and difficult or maybe wrong in the world, and that's why these things get our attention, and the reason they do is because we are psychologically predisposed for survival. But then we carry that around in our hand, and now you're far more exposed to bad news by what you carry in your hand or put in your pocket all the time than you've ever been and I've ever been in our entire lives. I mean, bad news travels and it sells and it controls and it follows us everywhere we go. And nature causes us to want to look at it and pay attention to it. The Apostle Paul is going, no. He's saying, turn your notifications off. I wish Paul lived today because I think that's what he would say. Turn your news notifications off and shift your mind to the things that are good and right and things that are true. When's the last time you got a news notification about something that was amazing? That doesn't sell. And when you shift your mind, look at what he says. When you shift your mind to these things, look at what he says. The peace of God will be with you. His peace will just start following you around. It will accompany you. He grows it in you. You may be thinking, Shane, okay, wait, is this just like the power of positive thinking? Is this like a Jedi mind trick or something? Look, don't dismiss this. Be thoughtful. Science has actually proven this. Now, let's all geek out for a minute, right? There are two discoveries that have happened in the last 100 years that are amazing. The first one is what is called neuroplasticity. You're like, okay, great, what's that? It happened in 1948 where we discovered that the physical matter of your brain changes continuously. Prior to 1948, we just thought your IQ was fixed. We just thought nothing changed in the brain. You have the capacity you have, that's it. 1948, we discovered that wasn't true, that the gray matter of your brain is constantly changing. That's one of the things that happened. The second thing that happened just 27 years ago was neurogenesis was discovered. And neurogenesis is simply this, and you already know this. You know this even if you didn't know that word. Every day, you wake up and your brain generates new brain cells that are ready to be shaped. They haven't been impacted, but they are ready to be shaped by the thoughts that are coming into your mind. did you know that the primary change agent for the brain cells that you were born with and the brain cells that you generate every single day, do you know that it's not your environment? And it's not the food you eat? And it's not the nutrients or any other of the other substances? The primary change agent for your brain is your thoughts. That's not just Christianese I'm speaking, that's neuroscience. Thoughts change the physical nature of the brain, and nobody saw that coming. Dr. Herbert Benson, he is the chief of mind and body in medicine at Harvard. He said this, that negative thoughts actually obstruct the body's natural healing process. Right? Negative thoughts basically block your body's capability to reinstate shalom within your physical body, not just your emotions, your physical body. Negative thoughts do that. Cause your physical body not to be able to heal. And science verifies, though it's funny, science verifies this, but the Apostle Paul, what he said when he was talking about this same idea to a group of people, get this, in 56 AD. And we didn't get it till the middle of the 1900s. 56 AD, in the first century, here's what the Apostle Paul said. Do not conform to the pattern of this world. You ready? Here's what he said. But be transformed. How, Paul? It's going to take us like 1900 years to figure this out. By the renewing of your mind. Don't let yourself be conformed to the environment you're in, but be transformed by the things you think about. We are all engaged in a formal process all day long. This isn't a religious thing, it's a scientific thing, it is a human thing. You're being formed and shaped by the inputs that are coming into your life and by the things you read, the things you see, the things you listen to, the thoughts that get shaped from that, they are conforming you. They're shaping who you are. Maybe there's a better explanation, but this is my best explanation of what the Apostle Paul was actually teaching in these verses. So he says, okay, you live in an environment, right? You got that for me? Yeah, go on one more. You live in an environment, right? And if you're not careful, you will be conformed, right? You will be conformed to anti-shalom because of your environment. Because the inputs of your environment that you're in, whether they're right or true or not, you're going to be conformed from that. So your environment is going to conform you. And he said, but instead of that, when you have those anti-shalom thoughts, those things that divide and pull you apart, he said, entrust them. Entrust them. Not just entrust them to anyone, but entrust them to someone who can actually carry them and do something about them. Entrust them to the Prince of Peace. That's what you're looking for. And once you entrust those to the Prince of Peace, then you need to trade them. You need to make an exchange. Trade them. Trust those things as you present them to God. Your prayers and your petitions, and with thanksgiving that you bring these to God. You take on the things, and as you do that, you trade them for the things that are good and right and true, things that will bring about shalom in your life. And when you do, and when I do, then we are transformed. And that is how our world is transformed. And how we go from people who are divided and fractured and pulled apart to people who experience wholeness and completeness and well-being and peace. We can't just be peaceful. That takes intentionality. It takes an active participation on our part to cultivate the soil so God can renew our mind and grow it in us so that we experience shalom. Our first year in this building, our church was experiencing amazing growth. I mean, people from everywhere, kids, students, more services like we had never seen in the history of our church. All categories were up and to the right, except for one. Finances. You didn't know that, but it was true. In fact, We had all these people, and finances were in a downward spiral. I would say that they were worse than a downward spiral. I would say we were broke. Maybe worse than broke. Like, I just didn't see how we were going to pull out of this nosedive. And yet there were people everywhere. I didn't know how we were going to stay alive. And I was looking back and I was like, I've given 10 to 12 years of my life, and it wasn't just me, because so many other people had made sacrifices for us to be where we are. But it did not look good. And I honestly had done everything that I knew to do. And I just started preparing for the worst. I wasn't sleeping. I wasn't resting. My mind wouldn't shut down. And one night, in the middle of the night, because I was laying in the bed awake at the middle of the night, I had a thought that I had never had before. And I now know I'm not that smart, so I can't even take credit for that, because I'd never had that thought before. Where did that come from? So I can't take credit for the thought. But here's what I thought. I laid there in my bed in the middle of the night, and I thought, if this whole thing crashes and burns and we go out of business and have to sell the buildings and all that stuff, here was my thought. God, this is on you. Because this has always been yours and not mine. That's on you, not on me. I didn't decide that church should be the way that things happen. You did. I didn't one day think, oh, I'm going to go start a church. No, you said that to me. You're the one who told me to do this. So the outcome of all of this is just on you. And I remember that night when I said it out loud, I was like, I kind of feel bad saying this, but it was actually a really good answer. Truth was, it was my only answer. And it felt good in the moment. And I rolled over and I slept for the first time in weeks, maybe months. Peace of God. Outcomes hadn't changed. Nothing had changed. The peace of God began to guard my heart and my mind, and all of a sudden I experienced his peace. And I'm telling you, there is no Jedi mind tricks. Jesus, the Prince of Peace, promised his gift of peace to you and to me as we cultivate the soil for him to grow it. Jesus said when he was here, I'm leaving and I'm going back to heaven. And here's what he said. He said, but when I go, I'm leaving you with a gift, the peace of mind and heart. And the peace I give is a gift the world will never be able to give you. My well-being, my wholeness, my completeness, you can't get that from the world, but I'll give it to you if you will entrust to me what is dividing and fracturing and pulling you apart. If you will trade it for what is good and what is right and what is true and honorable and lovely, I'll give you my peace. This exchange is trading whatever is pulling you apart for the shalom of Jesus that puts us back together. It restores our well-being and our wholeness and our completeness. And this is how the fruit is produced in us. This is how we experience the fruit of peace. Don't be conformed to the image of this world. Trust and give it to me. Think on what's good and on what's right and what's true. Be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Be transformed. What does our world need now? It needs this gift in you and in me. It needs us, but not the current pulled apart version of us. Not the current anti-shalom us, but more Christ-like version of us, more peace-filled version of me and you, because that's what it means to be Christ-like. because that's what Jesus looked like. And that's how Jesus acted like and reacted like. And it's not just what our world needs. The truth is, it's what many of us need right now. So I don't know what you walked in carrying today. But here's the offering on the table. Trade whatever's pulling you apart today, whatever's divided and fractured you for the shalom that Jesus offers you. The wholeness, the completeness, the well-being. Jesus promised that gift to you.